All right. So after every single session of work that you're doing, so last night I actually recorded the last video and then I went to bed. Okay, so before I went to bed, I went ahead and I destroyed my resources because why would you pay for resources overnight? Now, I will note that VPCs and subnets are not paid resources, so I didn't need to do that, but you get the point. Terraform apply, then when you're done, Terraform destroy. Obviously, if you're actually deploying the application that you're going to then use, you're not going to destroy, but for this workshop, Terraform destroy is going to be your best friend. All right, so now that I don't have any subnets, I'm going to need to Terraform apply to get my current configuration back up and running. I'll go ahead and say yes, and then we will get to creating. All right, so if I go to my VPC now, I can see that I can filter by VPC and I have my coding with Kali VPC. And if I go to my subnets, you can see that I have my coding with Kali public and private subnet. All right, so that is pretty cool. I'm going to reload the page because I think it's still hung up on, the arrows, it was still hung up on the other one. All right, so the next thing is, as we learned in the last challenge, your public subnet and your private subnet, the only thing you did, right, if we look at the Terraform code, the only thing that we did was say, right, it's a public, it's a private. But we didn't actually make it public or make it private. All right, neither of them are public right now. They're both private. All right, how do we know they're both private? Well, that's through our route tables. So if we go look at our route tables, you'll see, let's go ahead and filter by our coding with Kali VPC. You'll see that we have a default route table, and the only routes that we have is local, and that's our CIDR block for the whole VPC. So what does that mean? That means that everything within the VPC is able to communicate with each other right now. So our public subnet is not actually public, all right? So we're gonna now add our public route table, so that way we can actually connect to the internet. We don't need it in order to connect to the internet, though. The route table needs to go somewhere, and that's going to be it needs to connect to an internet gateway. So we are going to create the internet gateway first. Okay, so how would I do that? Well, I can go to my Terraform registry, which is going to tell me all of the resources and how to put them up. And I'm going to say I want an AWS internet gateway. And here is the resource for the AWS Internet Gateway. All right, and an example usage, and you can kind of see how else it's used. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this block of code here, and below my private subnet, I'm going to paste it in. So the resource that we are provisioning is an AWS Internet Gateway. I feel fine about calling it GW. That's fine. All right, so now we're getting into some cool stuff, right? You can see that similar to our subnets, we're saying that the VPC ID is going to be AWS underscore VPC, right? That's this resource. And then dot main, that's the name of our resource, and then dot ID, all right? So each resource has an ID. Well, it should, but I haven't tested every resource on Terraform, so I don't want to speak untruly. All right. How can we see some of this? Okay. So what do we want to do? In order to see this, we want to actually use an output. All right. And wow, good job, Copilot knows exactly what I want. So I'm going to name it VPC ID. Okay. Output is going to spit out whatever I tell it to in my terminal after the resources are provisioned. So what do I want? I want the value to be and then I'm going to not let Copilot do it. So I want my value to be AWS. And see, these are all my resources that it's pulling up that I can choose from. So I want it to be my AWS underscore VPC. All right, the name of that VPC resource is main. And then and see, these are all of the things that you could do. You could have all of this output, all right, about your VPC, all right, but we just want the ID. So I'm going to go with, ID. All right. Now, do I need to output this? No, but there's cases that we'll get into as we get more complicated where we will want, and even in this challenge, we will want to output something to verify. All right. So now we have an output too, and then we have an internet gateway. I don't want to call my internet gateway main though. I want to call my internet gateway coding with Kali internet gateway. All right. And then let's go ahead and give it a try and say Terraform apply. All right, so it's going to add one and then it's not going to change anything, okay? And then you can see changes to output now. We see it's going to add an output of VPC ID and it's going to show us our VPC ID. Now, if we didn't have the VPC created already, it would say known after apply, but we already have the VPC. And when it went to check the state, it saw like, oh, that exists. All right, and even though we have 1, 2, 3, 4 resources, it's only adding one because the rest of them already exist. All right. So we can go ahead and say, yes, we want to create that internet gateway. So now let's go ahead back to our console and let's take a look at what we did. So we did an internet gateway. You can see our Coding with Kali internet gateway is up and it is attached, okay? If you remember when we did this in the console, we had to do this in 2 steps. So let's do test internet gateway. All right, we had to name it, right? And we created it. And then once we created it, we had to go to actions and attach it to a VPC. And then we had to select, why don't I don't have any VPCs. Oh, did I not create this internet gateway? Interesting. Well, this was just to show you how it works. I don't really, we're not going to worry about it. I'm going to just delete it. But you get the point. It would have been 2 steps in the console. And in Terraform, we can just do it in 1 step because it's already attached to the Coding with Kali VPC. All right. Next, so having the internet gateway doesn't really do anything for us because there's no routes associated with it. So that's what we need to do next is we need to create that public route table, all right? And we need to add the route that will go to the internet gateway, all right? So let's first just create the route table. I like to do everything in very little steps so that way I can really understand what the code is doing. All right, so AWS Internet Gateway, we don't need that anymore because we created it. So I want to look at an AWS route table. And I'm going to take a sip of coffee here. Let's do the route table. All right, so you can see that we have the resource, right? It's called AWS route table. They're naming it example. They are saying that it is associated with a VPC, and then they're adding the routes, right? So the first route is going to be that local, anything within that CIDR block that our VPC is in, it can communicate with. And then the next thing we want to do is it's going to be able to communicate with the internet gateway that we have. All right, I'm going to leave this blank because I just want to see it pop up and then we'll add that after so we can see what goes different. And then you can see that it also has the routes for, it looks like they're having some egress routes here too. We'll look into that. And then the name. All right. Oh, and then you can remove the routes by just making the route an empty array. That's cool. Okay, so I'm going to copy this block. I'm going to get rid of my output VPC ID because I don't need it, and I'm going to paste my block in. So I want this to be a public route table. Perfect. Like that. And then VPC ID is going to be AWS. Okay, also, did you see how this is like white? It's white because we don't actually have an AWS VPC resource named example. But if I change this to main, it turns blue because we do. So it's actually connecting to what we need it to connect to. All right. So the CIDR block that we're using is going to be this one here. So we can go ahead and pull this down. I want to put that here instead. All right. And then I'm going to get rid of this gateway ID, and I'm going to get rid of this here. And I'm going to call this my public, I'm going to call it coding with Callie public route table. All right. And then I'm going to do Terraform apply. Now, if you're like, do I need this line? Do I need this line? Just test it, apply and see what happens. Okay. You can see that we're going to add one, which is going to be our private route or our public route table. And then you can see that it's changing the output. It's going from outputting the VPC ID to outputting nothing. Bless me. Sorry, I just sneezed. All right, so we have an error on 49. So this resource is our issue. Oh, apparently we have to have a gateway ID. So I guess we'll just do it. All right, so our gateway ID is going to be our, if we look, and it already had it right, but let's just make sure we understand it. We want the resource, this, right? So AWS Internet Gateway, right? That's going to be the resource. And then we want the name of our resource, which we named it GW, and then we want the ID of that. All right, and it turns blue because it knows it. All right, so now let's try it again. All right, so what is it doing? So it's destroying did it create one just then? I don't feel like it did. But this is what's kind of good about doing this with Terraform, is then you can also still go and check. Okay, so it did create a public route table, and it did make it the route to 10.0.0.024. All right. So let's go ahead, and it's going to replace that by adding our gateway ID to it. Okay, so it's saying that the creating the route and the route. So our route here is the issue, our CIDR block here. And this is also why we should do more research on CIDR blocks so we understand it a little bit more. It's equal to or more specific than one of the VPC's CIDR blocks. This route can target only an interface or an instance. Interesting. All right. So I'm going to go look at the, okay, I need to sign in again. I'm going to go look at the route table that was default to this VPC when we created it, and I'm going to see what CIDR block they use because I want to use the same one. So they do use this CIDR block here. What is going on with mine that is different? So let's just paste this in. It looks the exact same. Let's go ahead and do Terraform, destroy everything, and see if just something weird is happening or if we are doing the same issue. All right, and then let's do Terraform, apply. Okay, so this is going to be a great case for GitHub Copilot. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, what does this error mean? And I'm going to let GitHub Copilot explain it. This error is related to the AWS VPC configuration in your Terraform script. It's saying that the CIDR block you're trying to assign to a route in your route table is either the same as or more specific than the CIDR block of your VPC. In AWS, a route in a route table cannot have the same destination CIDR block that is the same or more specific than the VPC CIDR block if the target is an internet gateway. Oh, okay. So I think what this is saying is that like this is specifically a route to my internet gateway, and this is the CIDR block for it. All right. It's still hazy though. So let's keep reading. Okay, to fix this, you need to ensure. So basically, yeah, okay. Callie, stop trying to explain. Keep reading. To fix this, you need to ensure that the CIDR block for your route is less specific than your VPC CIDR block. For example, if your VPC CIDR block is 10.0.0 /24, your route CIDR block could be this to represent all IP addresses, which is a common configuration. Yes. So this route with the gateway ID here is saying that we want the CIDR block of this to be able to use the internet gateway is what my thoughts are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight it and click. And then I think I have too many, I have codidioms too. So if I'm going to have to manually do it. So I'm going to explain this now, this block here, to get more information to verify what we're thinking. This block of Terraform code is defining a route for a route table in VPC, okay? The CIDR block line is specifying the destination CIDR block for the route. The CIDR stands for classless interdomain routing, a method for allocating IP addresses and routing internet protocol packets. All right, so in this case, that block represents all of the IP addresses in that range. The gateway ID line is specifying the internet gateway that the route is associated with. Okay, it's providing a path for traffic going to and from the internet. In this case, AWS Internet Gateway.gateway.id is a reference to the ID of the internet gateway that's defined elsewhere in your Terraform configuration. This means, I think this is the sentence that I've been looking for. This means that any traffic that matches the CIDR block of this will be routed to the gateway. However, as per your error message you received, if the CIDR's gateway should be more. Okay, so basically we're setting up an internet gateway. We set up an internet gateway, and this is the route that we're saying that we want in the route table. But we're saying in the CIDR block that we want traffic from this CIDR block to use the internet gateway. But that doesn't make sense because the internet gateway is for all traffic. So we want it to be this, which is the all traffic instead. Okay, so this is setting up this route for our public gateway. All right. I hope that makes sense, but we can go over it more if it doesn't. So now let's try to Terraform apply it. I was thinking that we needed that each one of these was a route, but that's silly. So I'm glad that we had GitHub Copilot to explain that to us. And now our error is gone. So thank you, Copilot. You did a good job. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at our public route table. And I'm going to refresh the page. And the route table is not found because I deleted that one. So refresh the page. Now let's go into here. So you can see that this local route is being set up for us. So we don't actually need to set it up. That's where I was confused. And then what we just set up is we just set up the destination and target of the internet gateway. So we're saying that here, all traffic can use our internet gateway. All right, cool. So now we have our route table and our internet gateway. And I'm trying to see if we should do anything else in this video. It's been a pretty long video. So we're going to end it here, and then we will pick up and actually try to create an instance and use this route and the internet gateway in the next video.